Well, we're talking about Tommy Robinson and the English Defence League. Of course, Tommy Robinson and his right-hand man have left the English Defence League last night over fears the group has become too extreme. Such is the joy and the peril of broadcasting on local radio, especially here in three counties, that as you're talking about a subject, the subject can walk into the room. Whilst I'm here on the radio, Mr. Robinson has joined me in the studio. Good morning to you, Tommy.
Good morning.
Hi. What inspired you to make the journey down to the building this morning?
My family messaging me. Obviously, this is my local town, so the people listen to this are people in my community. So my phone's been going bing, bing, bing. People are saying this, people are saying that. So obviously, I've come. I turned on just as I heard people saying that I'm chasing people around looking for their addresses. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I want a right of reply for that.
Well, let's give you that right of reply first of all, because I've seen that written. Sonny Hundle wrote a pice for The Guardian yesterday, which I'm sure you've seen, in which he repeated all of that.
Yeah, no, I haven't seen. Well, basically, throughout the last few years, I've received a lot of death threats, against my wife, against my children. I've gone to Bedfordshire Police on numerous occasions. People know I have. I've given them hundreds upon hundreds of death threats. They haven't acted. They haven't arrested one person. Now, when someone puts my family's address on a public forum, then I'm not going to go to the police anymore. And I made the decision months ago where I turned up. I saw my family's address, my mother's address, with someone saying, "Why don't people pop round and pay Tommy a visit?" At an address that I don't live at. My mum's got nothing to do with my views, and I've got a duty to protect my family. So the first thing I'd done was found out where he lived.
Except the reports say you got the wrong person.
No, this instance in Birmingham, I went up to the man's house and I knocked at 11 o'clock at night, and I bought a camera crew. And I said, "Well, please tell me why you're putting my mum's life in danger." And then after discussing with this man, who is a complete activist against EDL, I said to him, "I don't care if you're an activist against EDL. You say what you want against EDL. Say what you want against me. Don't start putting my family's address online."
Okay.
So when people say I'm running round, yes, I am frantically running round because I want my family's address taken off public forums to keep my family safe.
Okay, all right. Well, that's cleared that up. Let's talk about the threat to other people, though, that I guess people feel was issuing forth from the organisation that until yesterday you led, because people have said, and I've spoken to you before on radio phone-ins, people have called in to say that when you say you're having a peaceful demonstration with the English Defence League, when you're turning up as an act of protest or a march, actually it's a threat of violence because of the thuggish elements that you used to bring along with you. And at the time you said to me, no, this is a peaceful walk and I can't control everyone within it. Now you're sort of saying you really couldn't control those extremist elements.
What I'm saying is, like a football match, there's always people out for intent on trouble. You don't blame all the supporters. Yeah, so I don't want to condemn all English Defence League supporters. It's difficult. At the same time, I understand the anger and frustration a lot of those lads have got, because I've felt it myself, and I've tried to channel that and harness that. But the elements that my problem is the neo-Nazis, the real far right, who oppose colour of skin, who do generally hate all Muslims. That's my problem, and I've battled them for 4.5 years, and I've continued battling them, and I felt let down last February when I was away for 18 weeks and I come out and saw that people I fought to keep out this movement were welcome back. And that's everything I stand against. What
were you actually doing to dissuade them from joining in?
What, neo-Nazis?
Yeah.
I set fire to their flag. Yeah. When people say to me, "Well, we're anti-fascist," these far left organisations, I think you're anti-fascist. I've set fire to their flags. One of the things people condemn me for is having a criminal record, which I don't wish to say is that part of that criminal record is for confronting neo-Nazis in Blackburn at one of my demonstrations, where I was taken before the courts and charged for assault. Now, so I physically, because that's the point it got to with the English Defence League, they're on the street with us. So it got to a point which I'm reading newspapers are finally reporting what's gone on for the last 4 years, is that we have had in-house battles, physical battles, to keep these elements out. Now it got to a point, I can show, if listeners want to go on YouTube and put in RVF EDL, you can see all these Nazis in fields, and they're talking to me, telling me they're going to kill me, and there's 50 of them with balaclavas. So when it comes to tackling the far right, see, now I've made this conscious decision that I believe this is what's right. Yeah, what people are saying about demonstrating through Luton again, and in my heart, I don't think that's right for the town. So I can't bring that demonstration back here when I think has been right. What we've done has been right.
Why is it right? Why is it right to bring the message of the English Defence League, which you say you wanted to be anti-Islamisation, to communities of ordinary law-abiding moderate Muslims? Why is that right?
Why was it? I'll tell you why it was right to bring it to Luton, is because in this town there's been an inability by anybody to speak up against the problems of Islamist ideology. And I believe now, in the last 4 years, a lot of behind closed doors, even that council will be panicking about things. They'll be thinking twice, making decisions. When it comes to the police allowing Islamist groups to do certain things in our town, they'll be tackling them. They'll be highlighting them. I believe even the Islamic community are now tackling them. So
why do they need you?
Because that's why they've done it. Because we were a pressure movement. So
But I mean, Tony Blair was anti-Islamisation, wasn't he? David Cameron is anti-Islamisation.
Tony Blair's a war criminal.
Well, but the argument, no one liked 9/11. Do you know what I mean? Why do we need Tommy Robinson speaking up for the white working class to say actually the whole of Britain, including most moderate Muslims, are against Islamisation, if that is a concept?
Because it's one thing that lip service, it's another thing getting people to actually action. It's getting people to do something. And in 4 years, what I've said is coming out, we needed a groundswell of support. We needed a noise. I think we've got 4 years. I don't want it on my conscience, anyone getting killed from here on in, at demonstrations or anything.
From here on in?
Yeah, from here on in.
But what if it was on your conscience and it happened before?
For the last 4 years, I believe that what we've done has had to be done. I believe it's been part of...
So if someone had died, that would have been worth it?
Well, mate, 6 Muslims are in jail. They got caught with guns and bombs. They were going to kill us. So if I'd have been killed, do I think it'd been worth it? Yes, I was willing to...
I wasn't thinking of them. I was thinking about moderate Muslims who were in the communities you were targeting with flashpoints of
Well, in all honesty, mate, in the last 4 years, there's not one violent attack against a Muslim at a demonstration of English Defence League supporters.
But is that because the police had to turn up in such numbers to stop it happening?
Yes, if I'm honest, it probably is. It's because of the great policing on many demonstrations. There's a lot of anger and frustration. It's the same when you've got two oppositions. That's always the problem. But what I'm saying is, to get 4 years in with all that anger and frustration on either side, we've got to a point now where a voice has been created, and to continue doing that, I believe, that is not the right way. So I've made this conscious decision. To be honest, the decision that I made, it would have been easy for me just to walk away, quit. My mum's not well. I could have blamed... My wife's been asking me to quit for 4 years. I could have blamed it on any family issues. But to sit there and do what we done yesterday with Muslims, I'm getting so much flack. You know what I mean? I'm getting called a traitor, treasonous. I'm getting called a sellout. I've took money, all these different things. And so to do that was the most difficult decision. And I thought that through. And the reason why I've done that was because there's a documentary hopefully getting shown tonight, which is called When Tommy Met Mo. It's just me travelling around the country with a Muslim interfaith leader. And again, when I travelled the country with this interfaith leader, it concreted again my belief. So it strengthened my belief in the fact that this Muslim leader was an apologist. He was not accepting the problems that are in this country. He's part of interfaith, and what we have in this country, even in this town, with our local Christian interfaith and what's going on, is we have yes-no men who want to tick boxes, nod heads and get a picture taken for the newspaper. Now that is not going to solve any community cohesion issues in towns and cities across this country. Now when I met Mo Ansar, that's what Mo Ansar was, and I'm going around and he's ignoring, but then at the end of the documentary, Quilliam come in, and I see a Muslim, and I followed Quilliam for a long time, and when Majid sat down with Mo Ansar, he said everything I've been thinking. He put it on him. And I thought, oh my God, so he's not... There's two problems. There's Islamic fundamentalists and people who wish to enforce a violent form of Sharia, and then there's apologists who want to just pretend that is not happening.
Well, and then there's just ordinary Muslims, aren't there?
Yeah,
and then there's the rest of us who also don't like Islamisation. Or, I'm sorry, I'm using your word, also don't like Islamic extremism or any kind of religious fundamentalism, but don't want to join in with a group which is being associated with racism and thuggishness.
What you're seeing now is so many people messaging me saying, I've wanted to support you for years. Now I can. Yeah,
well, now a lot of people have alarm bells ringing at that point. They'll think, hold on, look back through history. This is what fascist leaders do. Now, I know that you're at pains to point out that is not what you are, but that's what they do, isn't it? They have a thuggish association in the initial stages, then they abandon the thuggish group. That's what Hitler did, that's what Mussolini did, and then they get political credibility in the mainstream arena.
Most fascist leaders have done fascist things. Or said fascist things.
Well, in this early stage of their careers, if the analogy holds true, all they would have done is what you've done, which is get together a group of thugs and hooligans and then abandon them and have a mainstream political career.
I don't want a mainstream political career.
What do you want?
I want to bring about real change. I really want to bring about change. And I want to tackle individual councils. And I want to work with Quilliam to highlight the wrongdoings. What we have is Quilliam have made an impact at national...
What change do you want?
What change do I want?
Yeah, what is the change that you want? Because
I'll tell you the change that I want. So we're in Luton Town here, and in my local council is Kadir Bask. And Kadir Bask is the leader of Luton Islamic Centre. And if you go on their website, I've got all the translations and the print-offs. It says that you can lash women. It also says you can execute homosexuals. Now, Kadir Bask has a seat at a table around my council. I don't want that. And why is Qadir Bask and that Islamic Centre been pushed as the face of Islam in Luton? We have one Salafi mosque, which is an extremist form of Islam. We have 25 other mosques.
Well, he's actually upstairs in the building now, so
fine.
We can bring him in and we can ask him that question.
Well, yeah, you can ask him.
But that's about Luton.
Yeah, that's
but for the country,
what I want to do is individual councils are getting it all wrong. They're sitting with the people that are going to break community cohesion. So what I want to do is, our local councillors, you ask them what is an Islamist, they won't even know. You ask them about radical Islam, you start asking them about these Hizb ut-Tahrirs, the group that Majid, who's from the Quilliam Foundation, used to be part of. They don't understand it. So I want to be part of a solution that educates on that, and at the same time, what has happened, I despise the far right, and I've battled to keep the far right out. And I will do anything I can, which I've made the agreement with Quilliam, to counter far-right extremism. Far-right extremism in the sense of neo-Nazis.
What could a Muslim do to convince you that they're not an Islamist? What's the distinction?
If they wish to enforce Sharia and a violent political form of Islam.
Who wants to enforce Sharia, really?
Hizb ut-Tahrir. It's like if you look at government statistics in are we going to pretend there's not a percentage of Muslims in this country and organisations that are actively working day in, day out to enforce a form of Sharia on people?
I don't know the answer to that, but I'm not pretending either way. I'm asking the question.
Tonight on TV, but anyone who's watching the news has seen today that MI5 have come out and said there are 2,000 Islamist terrorists that they're following in this country.
They have said that, yeah.
They wish to inflict murder on British people. Now, my point is, which is what I've been so passionate about, because I'm foreseeing the future. I've got 3 beautiful children. I'm looking at my children and thinking, when you get to my age, I owe it to you to prevent there being 20,000, because demographics show that that's the way it's rising. Now, 20,000 is a small army. Now, but this is what we must prevent. We must, and every one of us have a duty to prevent that. And when I've talked for years, which I've talked about radical Islam, if the problem was complete neo-Nazis, I'd have been talking about that. But at present, the major threat coming into this country is an Islamist ideology. People training out in that for Al-Shabaab. We've seen what's happened in Kenya. We see worldwide atrocities. That's what I've been talking about. And as I've said on TV, to any Muslim that has felt, even any Muslims in Luton, the thing with Muslims in Luton, the majority of them know I'm not racist, because I'm born in Luton. I know so many of them. How are you doing? Yeah, not bad.
We've just been joined in the studio by Qadir Bash, who Tommy Robinson was just talking about. Hello, Mr. Bash. Good to meet you. Well, you feel awkward. I was talking about you and you walked in.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
There you go. That's live radio for you. Hello, Mr. Bash. Were you hearing what Mr. Robinson was just saying about you?
I was downstairs.
Put your headphones on for us.
Where are these headphones on?
Have we got any here for you? There we go. This is exciting Renegade radio, isn't it? There we go. And those plugged in for you.
Excuse me.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Where do we start?
I mean, I'm asking Mr. Robinson why he's left the English Defence League. He's saying he's anti-Islamisation. He's not anti-Muslim. He just gave you as an example who is on the Luton Islamic Centre as someone who he believes in some sense, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Robinson, is pro-Islamisation is an Islamist rather than just a Muslim.
Salafism, yeah.
Okay, so what do you say in response to that, first of all?
Okay, first and foremost, Tommy, I don't know, what's behind all this, but I'm going to cast your mind back in 2010 when I had a meeting with yourself, Kevin Carroll, your cousin. We sat there, we talked a lot. 3 hours, we had another meeting after that for another 3 hours. We discussed Salafism, we discussed Islam, we discussed the Islamic Centre, their role in propagating Islam, etc., in details. And either you've got a short memory or you're suffering from some illness, because we made it explicitly clear there, Tommy, if you remember, that we do not enforce Sharia in this country or anywhere in the world. Remember I said to you, there's a verse in the Quran where Allah said, La ikraha fi din, that there is no compulsion in religion. So how can the Islamic Centre then impose Sharia upon anybody? We had that conversation, and you said to me in that meeting, I didn't know that. That's one thing. Second thing, Tommy, if you remember also, back in 2010, this is a really crucial point, because you're going through this phase, and I do wish you well in your change. I hope eventually you get to the point where you need to be. But right now, I still think you're very far from where you need to be. In that meeting, Tommy, do you remember we said, me explaining to you that... do you remember you telling me and Kevin telling me that you created this monster which you couldn't control, And that's back in 2010. You said to me, when I started out, we were only against Islamic extremism. And you wanted us, Islamic Centre, to work with you back then. And we said to you, yeah, we're quite happy to do that if it's just that. But your rhetoric is against Islam, against the religion.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Batch. Give Tommy Robinson a chance, Mr. Batch, to respond to what you've just said.
Can I ask you a straight yes/no answer?
No. You need to clarify first. You need to clarify first what's changed from back then till now.
Well, I will, but can I ask you a yes/no answer? Under an Islamic state, where all the 6 points are met for Sharia, would you cut off a thief's hand?
Now, you see, this question...
Yes or no?
You know, let's look carefully at this question.
No, come on, man, yes or no?
Okay, let's hold on. I'm going to try and share this now. Let's both get you to answer both questions. You both answered...
I'll answer.
You both asked fair questions.
I'm not going to do no yes or no answers.
Well, why not?
Because there's details in this.
Stop.
Because what you're trying to do, you're trying to create a picture...
If we all talk over each other, no one can hear what we're saying. Just one second. Just hold... Order. 1 second. Let's address this bit a bit. Mr. Robinson, we've turned your mic down so I can try and... We've turned both your mics down so I can try and intervene here. Just let me just try and chair this for a second, because I'm trying to represent our listeners who are listening and probably want answers to both questions that you've both raised, and I think that's fair. So, Mr. Robinson, I will put your question to Mr. Batch to him again in a second. Mr. Robinson, answer Mr. Batch's question, which is, what has changed?
What's changed is, to solve the problem, we need the support of reformists and true moderate Muslims, and we're never going to get that support whilst doing certain things and insulting their prophet and shouting Allah, Allah, who is Allah, because what we're actually doing along the way, which we've done out of anger and frustration along the way, and what that actually going to do is side certain Muslims. It's going to give them something in common with extremists, because they're going to feel under attack in certain issues.
So you acknowledge that you had the opportunity to work with him before, and you decided not to take that, and that now would seem perhaps
when we had the opportunity to work before, we went and done research onto Mr. Bask's website, which I've got copies of all of it. And on the website, it said about execution of homosexuals. It said derogatory terms of Jews. It also said a 12-page statement about lashing adulterers.
Right. Let's put that to Mr. Batch.
What I want you to put to Mr. Bask is a question that I asked him.
I'm going to. Yeah. So, Mr. Batch, Mr. Robinson says you support the idea of chopping off a thief's hands if they steal things like flogging gay people and women.
No. What I said, I'll ask the question. In a Sharia state, when all the points are met for Sharia, if someone's thieved and all the points are met, should they be cut off? Right,
and your point being, is this something that's actually going to happen in Britain?
My point is, I'm asking Kadir Bask if he thinks that is a yes or no answer.
But don't we know that that's what Sharia law says, and does that matter in Britain?
So what we're saying is that I'm labelled as an extremist sitting here, but Kadir is labelled as a moderate, and he's here, and he believes you should cut someone's hand off.
Because we're talking about distinctions on the street of Britain, but let's let Mr. Batch answer that for us.
Right, okay. Tommy, before I answer that question, I just want to highlight something you said, which maybe the listeners didn't hear, that I take you're regretful for insulting our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. I take you're regretful for that.
I'm regretful that has offended people. When I say assaulted, I believe I spoke facts about the Prophet Muhammad.
All right, okay, so you still haven't changed. Okay,
when you say I still haven't changed, no, if that's caused offence to anyone, then which is what I've just said.
You've caused a lot of offence to all practising Muslims.
But Kadir, do you not think homosexuals? Do you not think homosexuals in Luton are going to feel offence at your website saying they should be executed?
I'm going to answer your question, right? But before I get to that, you've offended every moderate, Muslim by saying that Prophet Muhammad is paedophile, Prophet Muhammad did this, etc.
No, Kadir, okay, let me answer that. What you've just said is what I said. So can I answer you, yeah? How old was the Prophet Muhammad? And how old was Aisha?
You're talking about an incident that happened 1,500 years ago in a society which you have no idea of what goes on over there. If anybody had any right to criticise what Prophet Muhammad did, it would have been his enemies at that time when he was alive. And when he was alive and living there,
but Mr. Batch, we do have the freedom, don't we? We have the freedom of speech to talk about religion.
Today we don't do these things.
No, but the problem is today we don't do these things. Everybody has the right to criticise.
No problem. I take that on board. I take that on board.
So if I wish to say that 1,400 years ago, if Muhammad was 56 and Aisha was 9, yeah, that's wrong. And in modern terms, Britain, that is paedophilia.
Yeah, that's fine. And I accept that. No, that doesn't offend me, and that's acceptable. In modern day Britain, that's what it is. Yeah. That's not a problem.
So how have I offended you?
You offended by saying that the Prophet Muhammad was a paedophile, when he was not a paedophile. This was a practice.
He is 56 and she was 9.
Okay.
You cannot judge. Let me just say, you cannot judge what happened 1,400 years ago with the eyes and mind of today.
Okay, you can't philosophically, you can't. Philosophically, you might not be able to do that, but you can legally do that, can't you? You can have a debate about religion. You are allowed to do that. But I understand that, of course, you're saying some Muslims would be offended. But in fairness, everyone's allowed to do that. I could come on the radio here now and say, I probably wouldn't want to because I would fear the backlash, but I can come on the radio and talk about Jesus and talk about Muhammad. That is allowed. I want you to answer Mr. Robinson's suggestion, which is that there are things on your website which says, okay and proper to oppose homosexuals, flog women, chop off hands.
First and foremost, what views we hold, what we put on the website, Tom Robinson, are the views of Islam. These are the views of the Sharia. This is the view of the religion, and I don't think there's anybody in the world that does not know these things that you're saying.
So you think that's conductive to put on your website?
Let me answer it. Yeah, this is clearly what Islam teaches. This is what the Sharia is, and we don't hide behind that. We're happy. We believe in the perfect society. In the perfect society, that is the perfect solution.
You think the perfect society
One second. Let me finish. This is what we hold. Are we advocating these punishments to be implemented in Great Britain? No. I challenge you to show me one statement on our website or from myself or anybody from the Islamic Centre that says that we should be lashing women on the streets and men on the streets. Okay. We should be punishing homosexuals, etc. Show me evidence. And there's nothing there. So what you're doing is you're scaremongering.
Okay,
and this is what you've been doing since 2009. You haven't changed, Tommy.
Scaremongering. You've got on your website that homosexuals should be executed, but I'm scaremongering. Could you imagine on English Defence League website if we had Muslims should be executed?
Okay, I'm going to pick you both up on that point of what exactly the English Defence League do want and exactly what an ideal society would mean here in Britain. I think the listeners are interested in both of those things. I thank you for making them. I thank you for letting me talk again. We do have to take the travel. You're listening to BBC Three Counties Radio.
Travel news for beds, cards and bugs.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
M1 northbound one-lane blocks due to an accident with an overturned van 12 to 13 for Lick 3 towards Bedford, with the anti-clockwise M25 running heavy around 24 for Poddisbar. Clockwise is roundabout. Justin Peterson, BBC Three Counties Radio.
Thanks for that, Justin. Well, Ollie Mann sitting in here for the JVS show. I've got Kadir Batch and Tommy Robinson, former leader of the English Defence League, sitting here with me. More of your thoughts and that interview coming up after the news.
Local and vocal across beds, hearts and bucks.
This is BBC Three Counties Radio.
It's 10 o'clock. I'm Catherine Boyle. The headlines: former EDL leader defends decision to step down. St Albans commuter finds rail fare loophole, and Wiltshire steps into residency row.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
The former leader of the Luton-based English Defence League has been explaining his decision to step down from the group. Tommy Robinson, also known as Stephen Lennon, says he'll now join forces with anti-Islamist think tank the Quilliam Foundation to tackle extremism in all its forms through democratic means. But he told Ollie Mann that this shouldn't be seen as a betrayal of the EDL's core values.
I don't want to condemn all English Defence League supporters. It's difficult. At the same time, I understand the anger and frustration a lot of those lads have got, because I've felt it myself. And I've tried to channel that and harness that. But the elements that my problem is the neo-Nazis, the real far right, who oppose colour of skin, who do generally hate all Muslims. That's my problem. And I battled them for 4.5 years.
More on this coming up next with Ollie Mann. A new report says a multi-million-pound border system intended to stop terrorism and crime isn't working as it should. The Chief Inspector of Borders and Immigration, John Vine, says advanced passenger information, which is meant to collect information on nearly all journeys in and out of the UK, is only being used in around 65% of cases. The new head of MI5, Andrew Parker, has warned that there are thousands of Islamist extremists in the UK, and the agency is fighting terrorism on more fronts than ever. In his first public speech, Andrew Parker also said that leaks from the likes of the former intelligence analyst Edward Snowden damaged the margin of advantage that the security services had. Bedfordshire police say 11 to 20-year-olds are increasingly the prime targets for violent criminals. The latest figures show that 1 in 5 street robberies involves a young victim, and the perpetrators are often teenagers too. Richard Denton is Bedfordshire's Children and Young People Development Officer.
And we certainly had about 12 to 18 months ago a real issue in Bedfordshire with street robberies, and we've put a lot of investment, a lot of work with schools and other education settings to deliver educational programmes to improve the problem. And the good news is that actually the work that we've put in has cut our street robbery figures down quite dramatically.
A St Albans man has successfully sued First Capital Connect over the price of his commute. Andrew Myers worked out that it was £700 cheaper to buy a ticket from North Watford. First Capital Connect say they'll be closing the loophole, which, according to Mr Myers, was wide open.
I was shocked at how much the annual season was. I looked around to see if there was perhaps a journey that was cheaper or could be done in 2 legs. and I saw that this was cheaper. The website from the National Rail Inquiry specifically says that if it's shown on the journey plan as a through route with one ticket, you can use your ticket. So I bought it.
In sport, David Bernstein, the former chairman of the FA, says although he'd prefer to see homegrown talent play in the England team, he doesn't have a problem if players represent the national side that have qualified under FIFA residency rules. Bernstein was responding after England midfielder Jack Wilshere said he didn't want to see Manchester United's Belgian teenager Adnan Januzaj join him in the national team one day. The weather, sunshine and showers and a top temperature of 16 degrees Celsius, that's 61 Fahrenheit. Get the latest news and sport online at bbc.co.uk/3counties.
This is Ollie Mann
on BBC Three Counties Radio.
Well, good morning to you. Ollie Mann here on Three Counties Radio, standing in for Jonathan Vernon-Smith on the JVS show. It's just gone 10 a.m. and this morning, well, let me tell you how this happened. We were talking about Tommy Robinson's decision and Kevin Carroll, of course, to leave the English Defence League. Their statement last night made with the group Quilliam, the counter-extremism think tank, self-described to stand down. Tommy Robinson said he rejects the fascist views. Excuse me, I'm completely misreading that. Tommy Robinson said that the group was becoming increasingly right-wing, essentially, increasingly extremist, and that he felt he couldn't deal with all of the elements in it. As I was talking about Tommy Robinson, asking your questions about him, he came knocking on our door, and now he's sitting here in the studio with us. He's joined in the studio now by Kadir Batch from the Luton Islamic Centre, who we had as an arranged guest on this subject as well. So we've ended up having a bit of a Barney about all of this. And just before the news, Kadir, you said that in an ideal society there would be punishments for example homosexuals, and Tommy Robinson had put the point to you that this is why he was concerned by your ideology, which is why he was anti-Islamic and anti-Islamization, and put Luton Islamic Centre in that camp. Do you understand why Tommy Robinson might be concerned by Islamic ideology when, even though you say we don't want it in Britain, you do use phrases like in an ideal society and then come up with a statement like that?
Yeah, that's fair enough. He has every right to disagree and to criticise. For me, when I say ideal society, I mean an Islamic society, not a Western secular society where we live here at all.
But you are here.
One second, every Muslim, moderate Muslim, holds his belief as well.
But ideally, would you want this to be an Islamic society?
Yeah, we'll come to that just as much as any person would want their...
So ideally, what you want...
Just like any person would want their...
I'm trying to get the vision, the best Britain you could see, how would it look?
I'll come to that. I want to answer his question first, then I'll come to your question. Your question was ideal society, Now, when I say ideal society, I mean an Islamic state. We are not in an Islamic state. We're far from Islamic state. But however, this is the teachings of Islam, and every moderate Muslim holds that these are the punishments in an Islamic state.
That's concerning.
No problem.
In an Islamic state, yes.
Concerned, and you can criticise it. You can disagree with it. But the cows come home.
I actually want to represent moderate Muslims who are listening, who might say, actually, well, I'm a moderate Muslim, and I don't want homosexuals to be punished for being homosexual.
Yeah, in an Islamic state.
Well, in an ideal state, which is the word used.
What's an ideal state?
Well, that's what I'm asking you. What I'm saying to you is you are playing into right-wing hands, aren't you?
No, I'm not. I've already answered that. An ideal Islamic society is an Islamic state, as far as I'm concerned. Living in an Islamic society, that's the ideal. But we are not in that.
But there are moderate Muslims here who consider this to be an ideal state, that they can practice their religion in peace and not be under Sharia.
And that's exactly how I feel. I feel that this is a society which we can practice our religion, no problem, but it's not an ideal state for me. Do you call it an ideal state where you've got so much crime? If you call it an ideal state,
what's your ideal state?
I've said it twice already. You want me to say it a third time? You know very well what I hold as an ideal society. However, does that mean that we are imposing the Sharia law on the society of Great Britain? Absolutely absurd.
Do you know what?
How can anybody think of this?
Well, what would a moderate gay Muslim listening to what you're saying think? Well, they might come to that conclusion.
I've been on this show, on one of the shows here, and I've spoken to a so-called moderate gay Muslim. And, we differed, and that was the end of the matter.
Can I just say...
That's the product of being in this society, the freedom of speech, and freedom to be able to...
And you're entitled to freedom of speech, which is why you're allowed... Absolutely,
exactly.
That's why you're allowed to do it.
So do I not have a right now to hold...
You do have a right. All I'm simply pointing to you is, this is... Tommy Robinson was arguing, essentially, this is what the English Defence League was fighting, and what I'm saying is, to listeners who don't like the English Defence League, you're saying, well, I can sort of see where he's coming from.
Yeah, this is why I'm saying that he is scaremongering, because the reason why is because all these years, have you ever heard from the Islamic Centre saying we want this implemented in Great Britain?
Okay, good. No, I haven't. So let's put that point to Tommy Robinson.
Can I just put a point, yeah?
Well, answer that, though.
Okay,
answer that first.
Our local council, we're in Luton. Luton Borough Council have refused dialogue with me for 4.5 years, yet this man sitting next to me, whose ideal vision for this country would be homosexuals getting executed, it has a table at the seat with the council.
He did just stress that wasn't his ideal view for this country.
His ideal view.
He did use the word ideal, which I picked him up on.
Not for this country.
So not
for this country.
What is your ideal future for Britain? What's your ideal future?
I don't have an ideal future for Britain.
What would you want to see Britain?
What I would like to see is peace, tranquility, happiness. All the religions get on together.
So you would not ever want Sharia in this country?
In the future, if Sharia came to this country, it would only come by the people choosing. I'm coming to your question. You're asking me, and I'm giving you the answer. If you want to listen, that if Sharia ever comes to this country, it will come by the people's desire for it, not by force, not by war, not by killing, not by harming at all. That's the only way that I envisage Sharia. Can I finish what I'm saying? That's the only time that I envisage Sharia in this law and in this country. So you tell me now, what decent, person is going to reject that? If this is what the people want,
but then let them do it. It is relevant.
But if the people do not want it, then it's not going to happen.
Can I ask you, would you want Sharia in this country?
I've answered it already, my friend.
No, can't.
Listen to. Do you want
you
me
just
repeat?
don't give you.
Do you want me to repeat again? Yeah, I've given you my answer.
Yes
Tom.
or no?
And you just.
Yeah, well, I took it as a yes, but I'm hoping the presenter took it as a yes. Are we agreed?
Well, the word ideal was used.
I hope Luton Borough Council are listening to this interview.
I think 1 second. Let's talk about Luton Borough Council. What makes you think that I'm sitting with Luton Borough Council every day anyway?
When MEPs come to Luton to counter the English Defence League, you had a seat at the table with them.
No, whoa. Which MEPs?
When 5 MEPs come into Luton, yeah, I'm not right.
No, I wasn't at no table with no MEPs. I was in the coffee pot. That's it. That's what in the coffee pot when one of them MEPs came.
Do you have political dialogue? Do you have debate? Do you have dialogue with Luton Borough Council?
As much as you have dialogue.
I don't have any dialogue. I refuse dialogue.
We've only got a few minutes left. We've only got a few minutes left on this because we have to go on with the rest of the show. So I want to put one question finally to both of you. To Mr. Robinson, your mic's down so that I can put one question to both of you finally. Mr. Batch, the issue that Mr. Robinson has identified with what you've been saying is that if there was a local politician who privately held views, in your case it might be homophobia, people would say from what you've said, what if it was anti-Semitism, and put on a website in their own name that they believe that thing, then even if they never openly called for that to be in place, isn't it reasonable that some people are going to have some fear of that person and the effect they could have on their local area?
They have every right to. Why? Because not everybody wants to Sharia. Not everybody wants Islam. Not everybody wants this to see this as an ideal, solution. So they have every right to.
But every right to say it, but do they have every right to fear it? Isn't it natural that you're going to stir up fear with that?
You fear something which is really, not to be feared. Because look, you can look at how the Sharia is established in Saudi Arabia, for example. Do the people fear the Sharia? They don't fear it. But actually, I haven't said that. Sometimes from the things that people fear is what keeps society in order. Like, you fear going to prison, so you do not commit a crime. It's similarly like that. It's a deterrent. The Sharia rules are deterrents. They're not implemented. How many hands get chopped off? How many women get lashed? And it just doesn't happen. Very, very, very few. So 40. I mean, it just does.
Okay.
In an ideal Islamic society, these laws do not get implemented. They're just deterrents.
Okay. Final question for Mr. Robinson. Then we have some calls, and I want you to talk to our listeners.
What Kadir's saying is that gays should be too scared to be gay.
Final question for you, Mr. Robinson, before we go to our listeners, and our listeners can ask you about that as well. But this is, after all, more about you. It's your news day, not Miss Kadir's. What I want to ask you is, how are Muslims listening supposed to engage with you, bearing in mind the past that you've had, whether you intended that or not? Isn't it natural that, just as you're saying, your followers would fear what Mr. Batch has on his website? Isn't it natural that moderate Muslims would fear you? And why would they engage with you rather than with another organisation?
Because I believe many moderate Muslims listening to this will support what I've been saying rather than what Kadir's been sitting there saying.
OK, let's take your calls. They're coming in right now and you can join in. 08459 455 555. You can text 81333, starting your text with 3CR. Let's go to Mark in Stevenage. Good morning, Mark.
Hello, Ollie.
Hi there. Have you got a question that you'd like to pose directly to Mr. Robinson?
Not really. I mean, it was just basically just bringing up a point about why so many people joined Tommy's organisation, why they joined the EDL, because he did have a voice that nobody else was sort of saying, because if we ever mentioned anything, we was always classed as racist. We could never say anything. But basically, the point I wanted to make was this. Mm-hmm. My son was working in Berry Park, and he was his builder. He was doing an extension on a house. He went there in the summer, and he was wearing his Union Jack shorts. I was sitting in the sitting room and he come home early, and I said, what's the matter? He goes, I've been sent home. I said, why is that? Because I wouldn't take my shorts off. He goes, a couple of radicals come up to me in their long dresses, that's what he called them, I don't know what they're called, and they said, take them shorts off, you're not working here with them shorts on. So the owner come out, they'd had a chat, and he said, look, if you can't take your shorts off, I change them. Anyway, he just left them and come home. And I just thought, and then he joined the EDL. That's why he joined, that's the point I'm making. He said, where can we go to, I can't even go out now, flipping shorts in my own country. And it was just like, I think what Tommy's done is he seems sensible person. He never seems to get up the wall, and he seems to put his point across quite logically. And he's actually gone on the telly last night, and my son rang me up and said, put the telly on. And I watched him on the interview, and he actually said in black and white, he has nothing against Muslims, he's against the radicals. I don't know what people are trying to, and I'd like a programme of the Quran where someone could sit there. I think a lot of people would watch it and go through page and page and page, so we can understand who's right and who's wrong, because nobody seems to know what's going on. That's the basic point.
Mr. Robinson, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, we're in the process of making a documentary similar to that with Quilliam. They have Islamic scholars, but I'm sure their views and their interpretations may differ to other Muslims' interpretations. So that's the problem. There's either a problem with the scriptural interpretation, which is where we're getting these problems from with radical elements. But for me, it's like, I can understand completely what he's saying. I don't hate all Muslims. What I'm saying is, what I have, my vision for the future, and what I'm petrified about, is seeing what Qadir's view for the future getting installed.
But he's been at pains here to say that's not his view for the future of Britain.
No, look, at a minute, with 5% of the country is Muslim. We've got 3 or 4 million Muslims. When there's 30 million Muslims, what do you think it's going to be like?
Right, so that does sound very much like that's an anti-Muslim comment rather than an anti-radical Muslim concept.
No, what I'm saying is a percentage.
Yes.
In Luton, we've got 26 mosques. One mosque is going to say the things that Qadir's sitting here saying out openly. Mm-hmm. One mosque, the Salafi mosque, because he's going to stay true to his beliefs. And that's one mosque out of 26. So in the percentage-wise, it's a small percentage that are Salafi and that are taking that form of Islam. Mm-hmm. What I'm saying is, as demographics increase, that percentage gets bigger.
Right, so then isn't it a reasonable translation of your preachings, of your beliefs, to say that therefore you don't want any more Muslim people in the country because the percentage of people who believe in radical beliefs is going to increase?
My problem is that we need to get the problem, we need to tackle it. Well, does anyone here, even listening to this, think that Luton Borough Council, working with Qadir, is tackling the problem? And refusing to have dialogue with us.
Well, let's talk to a Muslim caller who thinks perhaps there isn't this problem at all. It's Shakil who's calling from Luton. You're pointing at your headphones, Mr. Batchley. You're not here.
No, I can't hear nothing.
Could you hear the last caller?
No, nothing.
Okay, can we try and sort that out for him? Someone please come in and help him out with that. Sorry about that. Let's talk to Shakil who's in Luton. Good morning, Shakil.
Good morning.
Hi.
Hi.
Now, you're calling in. What it says on my screen is a vague précis of what you're going to say. What's written here is, I've never met another Muslim who wants Sharia law. Is that what you're essentially calling to say?
Yes, it is. Then what I'm saying is that Tony Robinson is taking a completely wrong view about Islam, and he even I don't think that he has a little understanding about Islam and Islamization.
What's he got wrong?
Because he's mixing two things, extremist Islam or radicalized Islam with common Muslims. So I never met any Muslim, including myself, who said that we want to enforce Sharia law in this country. But Islam says that wherever you live, abide by the land of law, which is, if we are living in UK, obviously, we are supposed to abide by the law of UK. And no one wants to enforce Sharia law in this country. This is totally wrong.
Mr. Robinson, have you met people who want to impose Sharia law in this country?
I've heard that comment that we have to live by the law of the land. Tonight there's a documentary on ITV that shows out of 56 mosques, 18 were marrying 14-year-old children because it propagates what agrees with Sharia, and the Imam clock.
But the mainstream government are trying to clamp down on that, aren't they? And in fairness, that's flying people out to a different country with their laws.
What your man's saying is there's not one Muslim who wants to live by Sharia. Marrying 14-year-old children is the reason because it's okay by Sharia. Now, I wish people would listen to what I said, because what he's saying is that I believe every Muslim wants Sharia. That's not what I've said. That's not what I'm saying. Listen to what I'm saying. And what I'm saying is there's a percentage of Muslims that do wish for Sharia.
Shakil, there's a proportion, there's a percentage that do?
There is question. My question with Tony Robinson. What does he know about Sharia? Let's talk about his knowledge about Sharia. Then we move forward. That what is Sharia and how to implement this. Let's take his knowledge about the Sharia law. What does he understand about Sharia?
Well, I've just established from Qadir that under Sharia on their website, homosexuals need to be executed, and women should be lashed, and etc. etc. So.
No, this is not the Sharia.
I didn't say it was. Qadir did.
No, I didn't say that was Sharia, Tommy Robinson.
He said it's part of Sharia.
No. Listen, Sharia is a very wide and comprehensive meaning. No, that represents 4% of the Sharia. What about the 96% about being kind to your neighbour, praying 5 times a day? What about not going to sleep while your neighbour's hungry? Are you forgetting all these things? What about being kind to the Muslims, Jews, Christians living together? What about exactly? So you're focusing on a 4%, which nobody's calling to implement in this country anyway.
How can you distinguish on the street between a Muslim, an observant Muslim person dressed in Muslim dress, like we heard a previous caller describe, and someone who is, in your words, sort of fanatic and wanting to
unless they're on a demonstration calling for Sharia, which we do have many demonstrations across this country where people are calling for the
Tom, you're talking about al-Muhajirun extremists. That's all. You know, that's all they are. They're just a tiny minority, insignificant number.
Qadir, I just want to pick Tommy up on that. So if you can't distinguish between those people on the street in terms of what they believe by how they look, then why are street demonstrations, why were they ever the right, why don't you apologise for going to some street demonstrations in the past where you've been very confrontational with Muslim communities regardless of what they might think as individuals?
Street demonstrations have been a way of venting the frustration and building a platform so that the debate can be had. Whether people
and scaring ordinary people,
and which I've apologised if any people have felt scared. Yeah. But you see, we've got Dick Qadir sat here and said, I've got a homosexual cousin. I guarantee you, she's listened to this and she's scared. She lives in Luton.
What's she scared about? Who's calling to harm any homosexuals in Great Britain? Who is doing that?
If you want to look at the rise in homophobic attacks in predominantly Muslim areas, you will see it's gone up tenfold.
Oh my God!
And it's for reasons like this attitude. It's for reasons like this.
That's absolute lies.
No, it's not.
That's lies.
What about the theory that's going around online, Mr. Robinson, that part of your reason for leaving the English Defence League is that you can actually now become part of a lucrative ex-extremist book group, that you can go around the world talking about how you used to be an extremist? I know you hate that word, extremist.
I'm never going to say I used to be an extremist.
Whoa, you're an extremist even now. Man the burqa?
No.
Are you still? Have you changed your mind?
Are you forgetting that everyone's listening to this radio call and they're actually here? They've heard you say that you believe getting cut off of hands. You've heard you say.
Well, we've been around this. We've been around this roundabout.
I'm an extremist. Yeah. This is ridiculous. It's comical.
He's definitely an extremist. Wouldn't the listeners say? Wouldn't the listeners say? If somebody wants to ban the burqa completely in Great Britain and take away the freedom of religion from the society of Great Britain is an extremist.
70% of British people. 70% of British people. 70% of British people believe the burqa should be banned.
Let me quote your words. Look, burqas everywhere. They have no place in our society. Yeah. That's extremism. That is nothing to do with religion, freedom.
Okay, I'll take your answer that you're not planning to join that book circuit. Let's talk to Trevor, who's actually married to a Muslim lady. Hello, Trevor.
Hello there.
Good morning. What would you like to say to Mr. Robinson?
Well, I'm married to a Muslim. We both have our own religion within our marriage. My wife is very against those that come to this country, and anyone, including Muslims, that come to this country and want their own, if you want to call it their own identity, known. She's all for the fact is that if you come to this country, you live by the laws of the land. Now, there was a very good speech made not that long ago by the Australian Prime Minister, who basically said that if anyone comes to the country in Australia, you live by our cultures, you live by our laws. We're not saying that no one wants you to live by your own cultures within your home or outside your home, but as long as you don't try and ram it down someone else's throat. Now, at the end of the day, we have found that people come to this country from all walks of life. And I'm Irish. I've come and lived in the UK, the mainland UK. I abide by the laws of the land, and what everyone else should do is when they come here is that they should do the same.
But most Muslims wearing a Muslim dress and observing Muslim religion do abide by the laws of the land, don't they? Why are they shoving it down people's throats? Give an example of that.
Well, what I'm saying is, I mean, you know, a lot of people come to this country and they come and they don't want to live by the laws, as in the flag of the Union flag flying.
Well, give an example. Give an example of a Muslim who's come to this country doesn't want to live by the laws of this country, apart from well-publicised extremists. I mean, a normal Muslim you've met that doesn't want to live by the laws of this country.
Well, I mean, anyone that I have met, they have. But I mean, you've heard tell these extremists who want this and they want that from this country. But I mean, they've came from a society that didn't have a democracy. They've came here and they have a freedom of speech. If you want to view your opinions, then it's up to you to go to your politicians and put your say through them.
Mr. Robinson, I'll come to you in a second. Let's go to Mr. Batch on this first, since this is talking about the Muslim community. Mr. Batch.
Yeah, well, like you rightfully said, you know, show me a Muslim that is, you know, under the pretext of Islam, you know, doesn't live by the laws of this country. Nobody. All those criminals that are Muslims or non-Muslims or any other faith or non-faith, they do it because of their own desires and their own corruption. It's not because they attribute any of their actions to Islam or any religion. So really, the point really to me, you know, I take a point. Definitely, yes. You know, we are all law-abiding citizens. We should be, and we will be. However, it's got no real place in this discussion because we're talking here about moderate Muslims, you know, and not extremist elements. Everybody here in this room has agreed against extremists.
Okay, Mr. Robinson.
Extremism of EDL and Tommy Robinson.
Sorry, lads, I've got
Tommy. Yeah.
I've got to put in at 10:30. The main reason why I left the English Defence League is to make a breakaway, and I want to say that I believe Kadir Bask's views are that of an Islamist ideology, and I believe they're not representative of the majority of Muslims in this country. And I've made that break so that I can say I oppose this and I don't oppose that. I don't hate ordinary Muslims. I don't oppose Muslims wishing to denounce sort of execution of homosexuals, execution of cutting off of limbs. I believe that's a liberal way forward for this country, and that's why I've made this break to make that distinction. And I believe that there'll be many Muslims listening to this that will probably have their heads in their hands at some of the things Kadir's been saying.
Yeah.
Okay. Final point, because you have got to go. Let me just put one final question to you then. In a recent speech, this is a quotation that you said, Tommy, the Islamic community, and this is after the death of Lee Rigby, the Islamic community will feel the full force of the English Defence League.
No, you're getting it wrong again. I don't know where this is coming from.
Well, I'm reading.
I said that 2 years ago in Tower Hamlets.
All right, then I apologise for misquoting when it was, but not what the statement is. Let me read the statement first so that the listeners can understand. The Islamic community will feel the full force of the English Defence League if we see any of our citizens killed, maimed or hurt on British soil ever again. The Islamic community will feel the full force. Now, do you understand why Muslims would think that meant all Muslims and violence?
Are you going to take that back, Tommy?
No, let's discuss it.
In the last 4.5 years, all I get brought up on, one thing I get picked up on is that, and I made an error judgment in my wording for that, and I didn't mean to aim at all the Muslims. And what I'm saying is, I don't want to dwell. If we dwell on the past, you're going to condemn our future. I've done this to progress in the future in a way that I think is the right way to go, which is working with moderate Muslims. So I don't want to talk about the past. I accept that shouldn't have been aimed at all Muslims. A lot of the time, over the last 4 years, I've generalised. When I've been saying things, I get angry. I've got different things thinking about. I know who I want to talk about, and sometimes that will come across that I'm talking against all Muslims. And it may have been offensive to all Muslims, and for that I apologise. But I want to go. I want to move forward.